The year is 2026, and the digital world is suffering from a collective amnesia. We are surrounded by information, yet we have never been more disconnected from the truths that actually matter. Most of what passes for history in this era has been sanitized, filtered through the lens of modern convenience, and stripped of its raw, uncomfortable edges. But deep within the spiritual landscape of the American West, there is a vault that no algorithm can hack and no revisionist can erase. It is what we call the secret archive of the Duke. This is not a physical place filled with gold or silver. It is a conceptual fortress containing the biological and moral blueprints of a man who understood the fundamental mechanics of the human soul. John Wayne was a master architect of his own existence, and he knew that a day would come when the world would lose its way, a day when strength would be labeled a liability and silence would be mistaken for a lack of intelligence. Today, in 2026, that day has arrived with a vengeance. But for those with the eyes to see and the ears to hear, the archive is finally open. We are looking past the cinematic hero, past the Hollywood lighting, and directly into the private, unvarnished thoughts of a man who built a legacy that can withstand the corrosive acid of time itself. These are the lessons he didn't give in public interviews. These are the codes he lived by when the cameras were dark and his only audience was his own restless conscience. Welcome to the inner sanctum of the Iron Duke. To understand the secret archive, you must first understand the concept of essence. In an age of shallow appearances, John Wayne understood that fame was merely a shadow cast by the rock of character. In his private letters, his personal journals, and the margins of his scripts, we find a man obsessed with the standard. He didn't just want to play a man of integrity on the screen. He wanted to be the man that other men could anchor their lives to in a storm. The new generation of 2026 is discovering these hidden files and realizing that the Duke was a sovereign architect long before the term became a trend in biohacking circles. He managed his image, his business empire, and his personal resilience with a level of discipline that would make a modern elite athlete seem soft. He understood that grit wasn't a gift from the heavens. It was a muscle that had to be torn and rebuilt every single day through voluntary hardship. As we begin to blow the dust off these records, we see a man who was constantly hardening himself, preparing his mind and body for the inevitable collisions of life. In a modern world that is constantly searching for an easy exit, the Duke's secret archive offers something far more valuable, a difficult, narrow entrance into a life of profound meaning and unbreakable sovereignty. This is the foundation of the vault, and it is built on solid rock. As we move deeper into the second layer of the archive, we find the records of his most personal and grueling battle, a conflict that didn't involve a stagecoach or a six-shooter. It was his long, grueling war with the Big C. The way John Wayne handled his own mortality is perhaps the most significant chapter of his secret legacy, and it serves as a stark contrast to the way we handle health and safety in 2026. In our modern era, we are obsessed with wellness and the avoidance of any physical discomfort, but the Duke was obsessed with dignity and utility. Even when his internal systems were failing him, his spirit remained on the offensive. He refused to be a victim of his circumstances. The archive reveals a man who didn't ask for the world's pity. Instead, he demanded more time from fate to finish the work he had started. This is the anti-fragility protocol in its most raw and human form. He utilized his pain as a whetstone to sharpen his focus, proving that a man's mission must always be larger than his physical suffering. The new generation is studying this level of mental toughness and applying it to the psychological pressures of the digital age. They are learning that true strength is not the absence of fear or pain, but the absolute mastery over them. The Duke's private records are filled with these quiet, untelevised victories over the self, moments of pure will that never made the news but made the man a legend in the eyes of those who truly knew him. But wait, there is more to this struggle than mere endurance. The archive shows that the Duke used his time in the hospital and his recovery periods to engage in deep, intellectual fortification. He read voraciously, he studied the history of the Republic, and he sharpened his political and social philosophies. He knew that a man's mind must be as rugged as his body. In 2026, where most people use their downtime to sink into the numbness of mindless entertainment, The Duke's example stands as a radical alternative. He saw every moment of rest as an opportunity to reload his mental magazines. He was a man who understood that his voice carried weight, and he wanted to make sure that weight was backed by substance. The secret archive contains notes on books he read, thoughts on leadership, and reflections on the nature of courage that have never been seen by the general public. These are the tools he used to build his internal citadel. For the new generation of architects, these notes are like a map through a minefield. They show that you can be broken physically and still remain unconquered spiritually. This is the Iron Duke Protocol for facing the inevitable decline of the flesh while maintaining the absolute sovereignty of the soul. One of the most haunting and powerful sections of the Secret Archive is a collection of private letters that feel as though they were written specifically for us, for the people living in the year 2026. In these writings, John Wayne speaks with a chilling clarity about the moral landscape of America. He saw the early signs of the soft era and warned that a nation that loses its taste for the hard truths will eventually lose its capacity for freedom. He wrote extensively about individual sovereignty, the non-negotiable principle that a man must be the sole master of his destiny, regardless of which way the political or social winds are blowing. The new generation of lone riders is reading these words today and experiencing a deep neurological resonance. It is as if a voice from the 19th century is speaking through a 20th century icon to guide a 21st century soul. The Duke's Secret Archive is the ultimate information hazard for the modern, centralized system because it promotes radical self-reliance over state-sponsored dependency. It teaches that honor is not a social construct or a flexible fashion, but a biological and spiritual necessity for the survival of the species. These letters are the moral armor for the information war, providing the wearer with the stability to stand firm when the masses are being swept away by the latest trend of outrage or fear. The Duke was a sentinel, and his archive is the watchtower we have been looking for. In these letters, we also find his thoughts on the duty of the father and the responsibility of the citizen. He didn't believe in rights without responsibilities. He believed that the strength of the community was directly dependent on the strength of the individuals within it. In 2026, where the individual is often sacrificed for the collective, the Duke's philosophy is a breath of fresh mountain air. He argued that the best thing a man can do for his country is to be a man of his word, to provide for his own, and to be a shield for the weak. This is the protector archetype in its most refined form. The Secret Archive contains his correspondence with world leaders, fellow actors, and ordinary citizens, and in every single letter, the tone is the same: respectful, firm, and rooted in an unshakable sense of duty. He didn't change his mask depending on who he was talking to. He was the same man in a letter to the president as he was in a note to a fan in a small town. This level of moral consistency is almost non-existent in our modern world of curated personas and digital masks. The new generation is realizing that this consistency is the source of his legendary presence. If you want to be unshakable in the future, you must be integrated in the present. This is the secret of the vault. Perhaps the most overlooked and strategically vital part of the Duke's Secret Archive is the story of Batjac Productions, his own independent production company. In the year 2026, we talk a lot about the creator economy and independent platforms, but John Wayne was the original pioneer of this movement. He understood very early on that if you do not own the means of production, you do not truly own your voice. He built Batjac not just as a business, but as a fortress to protect his creative and moral vision from the shifting whims of the Hollywood studio bosses. This is what we call strategic autonomy. The archive contains the original business plans, the risk assessments, and the financial records that reveal a man who was as sharp and decisive in a boardroom as he was on a movie set. He was a man who understood that power is not about how much you have, but about the ability to say no to a deal that compromises your integrity. He was a businessman of the old school, where a handshake was a contract and your reputation was your most valuable asset. The new generation of entrepreneurs is studying the Batjac Blueprint and realizing that the Duke's legacy is as much a manual for business as it is for life. They are learning that to survive in a world of giants, you must build your own mountain to stand on. This Batjac mindset is about building something that lasts, something that is rooted in quality, authenticity, and a long-term vision rather than short-term profit or social media hype. John Wayne didn't care about the trends of the week. He cared about the stories that would still matter 50 years later. The Secret Archive shows his meticulous attention to detail, his work ethic that saw him as the first one on the set and the last one to leave, and his absolute loyalty to his crew. He understood that a leader is only as strong as the men who stand with him. In 2026, where loyalty is often traded for a few extra clicks or a better offer, the Duke's model of leadership is a radical rebellion. These new architects are adopting his command presence and applying it to their own startups, their own creative projects, and their own communities. They are learning that when you own the platform, you don't have to ask for permission to speak the truth. This is the ultimate form of information sovereignty. The Duke's Secret Archive proves that he wasn't just a star. He was a sovereign mover who changed the world by refusing to let the world change him. He was the master of his own fate and the captain of his own soul. As we reach the final moments of this 48th chapter, we must come to a profound realization. The Secret Archive of John Wayne is not a physical location you can visit, nor is it a set of documents you can simply read. It is a state of being. It is the internal vault that every man and woman of integrity must build within their own soul. In the year 2026, the greatest secret of the Iron Duke is that his legendary status wasn't a result of some magical talent or supernatural luck. It was the result of radical consistency. He showed up every day, he did the hard work when no one was watching, and he stood for the truth even when it was dangerous or unfashionable to do so. The archive is now in your hands. You are the custodian of this legacy. You are the one who must decide if these timeless truths will be buried forever in the dust of the past, or if they will become the granite foundation of a new era of grit, honor, and sovereignty. Do not be intimidated by the frantic noise and the moral confusion of the modern world. Remember the heavy, steady silence of the Duke. Remember the weight of his boots on the floorboards and the absolute clarity of his gaze in the face of a storm. Carry this secret archive with you as you navigate the unexplored frontier of your own life. Be the man of integrity that the system tells you no longer exists. Be the sovereign architect who builds his own world instead of begging for a place in someone else's. The ride is long, the sun is hot, and the path is often steep and lonely. But the view from the summit is reserved only for those who have the grit to finish the climb. The vault is open, the blueprint is clear, but the work, the heavy, beautiful work of building a life that matters, is yours and yours alone to do. This is the end of the 48th chapter, but for you, the legend is just beginning. It is time to step out of the shadows of the archives and into the light of the new frontier. Stand tall, speak slow, and never, ever back down from a fight that is worth winning. The Duke is gone, but the standards he set are eternal. The question is no longer what he did, but what you will do with the time you have left. The ride continues, the spirit endures, and the future belongs to the unbreakable. This is Andrew, signing off from the Secret Archive. Stay heavy, stay silent, stay sovereign. The trail is waiting for you. See you at the next horizon.